Welcome. Happy that you're joining us this morning for the Block Apps Ag Industry webinar. This is a third webinar that we've been able to put together to share information about blockchain and how we have the opportunity to impact our agricultural marketplace. With us today, we have Hannah Garrett, founder and CEO of Genesis Blockchain for Beef. I am Sid Siefken, Director of Business Development for our agricultural business within Block Apps, and really wanted to get an opportunity to share a really unique application that has been really a leverage of our TraceHarvest technology and an extension into a new part of the industry. With that, Hannah, would you care to introduce yourself and offer just a little bit of a background as to your professional experience and how you've moved to this new opportunity with blockchain? Hannah, are you with me?
Yep. Thanks, Sid. Sorry about that. My name is Hannah Garrett. Happy to be here today. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I am the founder of Genesis Blockchain for Beef. I've been working with Block Apps on establishing a platform for cow-calf and farmer rancher producers that allows us to really optimize and make better decisions on all of the data that we're receiving as producers. I've worked in the industry somehow directly involved since I got out of college. I originally set out to really build a solution that told the story of beef producers and the decisions that we're making. Our industry has been highly criticized and maybe even under attack, some might say, as of recently. And as a beef producer myself, I know that we're making the best decisions that we can to optimize the product that we're making for people, and that's beef. And I believe in the power of data and technology to help us turn that corner and really tell the story of the beef that we're producing and how we can help meet the needs and some of the demands that the endpoint consumer is ultimately brought to our table. So I'll talk a little bit more about my journey here, but I will hand it back over to Sid, and he can highlight from the TraceHarvest and the Block Apps perspective.
Yeah, our agenda for today is we're going to do a bit of an update just to make sure we're all level setting on the TraceHarvest network, have the opportunity to allow Hannah to walk you through the blockchain for beef, talk about industry participants and roles that they fill, a demo of the application, and then some Q&A as we go. Roberto Mandanas will be help moderate the Q&A. If you look down at the bottom on your toolbar, you'll see a Q&A pop up there. So feel free as we go along to include your questions on that, and we'll answer them as we get to the end of our presentation here. So with that, I'll make kind of more of just an update and information on who we are from a Block Apps perspective. Block Apps has really focused on enterprise blockchain solutions. The founders were together in 2015 and really solely focused on the application of blockchain technology and how it can be leveraged by businesses. We've had the opportunity to work with some great companies along the way, companies like Weaned, Ticketmaster, BHP Billiton in the mining business. We also have some great projects in the oil and gas and energy sector. Going forward, you'll see that there's some things that we knew. Founders said, we're going to base this on the Ethereum platform and take really the high points of Ethereum and really tailor it to blockchain for businesses, and so that businesses can really have an environment in which they're free to operate. And in that instance, there was a couple of things that we wanted to get across. We wanted to make sure that there was private networks so that the information that we share is just between those parties that have a need and access for that information. So private chains were very much a part of our vision for how businesses can leverage blockchain. managing the governance and privacy is also a very key component that we focus on from a Block Apps perspective, so that everybody can trust the integrity of the data that's being supplied and who has access to that information once it is on the platform. And also, we want to do this at a very high level of performance, right? Not carrying all of the overhead of public blockchains or any of the risk associated with cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin, et cetera. So we've been very active in that space. We're really excited to be able to extend into this new industry in the animal business and protein business. Our founders, Victor Wong, is a founding board member of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, where they really help guide the direction of how blockchains are implemented across all businesses. One of the founding customers that we have is Bear Crop Science, and they were really helping us get started in this area. We're helping them with some core technologies to work around things like traceability, stewardship, being able to have a safety record maintained and scale this over large animal instances. As we go through there, you'll see a couple of things that are in place, right? Some traceability around how do we protect products that we know are slightly unique in the marketplace? How are we handling stewardship, compliance, and in this case, animal identification? So if we really focus on safety and sustainability, a couple of things that I think are important is that this becomes a foundation that will allow us to extend blockchain technology all the way through the supply chain and really have a positive impact if there are opportunities to have really the visibility of how product was being produced, how it was handled in the production process. That really helps with safety, food safety if recalls are required, but really promoting the sustainability of the production practices that ultimately lead to consumer well-being. When we look at traditional supply chains, thinking about the work that we've done here in the seed business, we have an input provider, we have dealers, we have growers, we have elevators, and in this business, right, we do have the physical transfer of the product, right? So this is where digital meets the physical product. And you can see that we'll have the movement of that through the networks. Each of these participants have their own digital systems, right? For example, we've worked with Bear through SAP and DocuSign. Dealers have their own ERP systems that are focused on their interest as a business. Growers may have a variety of farm information management systems that are used to help capture data at the time of planting, at the time of harvesting. And in this instance, Climate Field View is one of those. Ultimately, growers can help market that through applications like Bushel that can allow them to have maximization of their output. Challenges today is, right, none of these digital systems are talking together very efficiently. And it makes for a challenge when you want information from a grower, if you are an input provider, or the elevator, if you don't know what the expectations are of yields, et cetera, in the marketplace. And that's really where we see the application of blockchain technology. Our blockchain technology is really the underpinning of these systems. And so what that is able to do is connect all these pieces from a digital perspective and really tie it together. This allows for a couple of things: multiple party data sharing in near real time with the power of private networks and the governance specific to these networks. And that's really the thing that we've been able to obtain with this particular use case, but also as we extended it to Genesis blockchain for beef. A couple of the value drivers that are driven from this include really reducing the expensive and high friction cost of manual tracking, being able to create a network that can operate fast enough and economically enough to scale to include all products, even commercial commodity products, and then being able to drive digital transformation and partner networks. And what I mean by that is that in some instances, we have good data that we'd like to share, but we just simply don't know how to go from one area to the other. And the underlying functionality of blockchain really allows that to happen. So how do we do this, right? TraceHarvest is built on the STRATO management solution that Block Apps has developed for managing the blockchain activities. And that becomes the core foundation of what we do. That information then allows us to build applications or the user interface on top of that that leverages those core tools. Part of the advantage there that we have, again, is the ability to go through and manage both privacy, governance, and that takes place really with the way that we're, managing the network itself. So let's talk a little bit more about privacy. Remember, we said we have private chains where members can manage the data flow and the visibility through these private chains. Who can see what information, and being able to help with the governance of that along the way. Governance meaning once HANA defines who of the members gets to transact information and what information that they have, then we're really in a good place because only those participants have access to that piece of data. And I think that's really important, especially when you want to have confidential information and driving value through multiple parties at the same time. So I think that's really good. Pardon me. Let's take a look at the STRATO architecture as we go. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see the underpinnings of the STRATO platform. We have the opportunity there through the core functionality of STRATO that allows us to have the fundamental blockchain network as its core. The opportunity to work with the enterprise integrations for IT, the management of the smart contracts and the governance. All of that takes place at the STRATO platform level. Then as we look at this, we say, okay, what are these industry applications that are able to work in our favor? That is, we built the TraceHarvest network and have presented that in this year. We also have some unique industry applications as well. Trace Carbon, recently announced for the oil and gas industry, has an opportunity to really manage and verify carbon impact through multiple companies. Also some work that we've done at the gov level. Furthermore, we can look at customers that have individual applications that can leverage that technology. So we're building on top of our technology stack, the STRATO platform, the industry application of TraceHarvest, and now the customer extension, which is Genesis Blockchain for Beef. With that, we will get into the details a little bit more from Hannah's perspective. So as we look at this, Hannah, why don't you go ahead and share the key capabilities of the Genesis Blockchain for Beef platform and the key things that you had really looked out for with your design criteria here that adds value to this entire industry.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. I felt it important to learn more about Block Apps as a company and the foundation that Genesis Blockchain for Beef is built on. It's important to note that they have a lot of industry experience and their IT grounding is very, very strong. I've enjoyed working with them and they've really helped me navigate through this process. I come from originally northeastern Colorado. I went to school at West Texas A&M University, got my bachelor's degree in animal science, stayed involved in agriculture. I wanted to become a veterinarian, chose a different path, and since then have kind of navigated my way through the industry, involved in animal health and working for ranches, handling data and analytics. I had the opportunity to work for a large-scale ranch, and I spent most of my days just trying to control inventory and help them optimize the decisions through all the data we had. Several thousand cows, large breeding groups, large breeding contemporary groups. And so they had a strong grounding in data, but they didn't know how to handle it. And because we couldn't handle it, we couldn't optimize our decisions with it. And at the same time, we really had an assault coming down on the industry. I had a high level interest in data management and blockchain technology. And I just thought, you know what, not only am I going to build a platform that is suited for large scale producers, I'm going to build one that tells our story. And when we're able to tell our story and prove it with data, who can refute that? The beef industry is is very unique. It's highly segmented. It's highly individualized. We're kind of the last of the Mohicans, so to speak, in the fact that there's a lot of us that are doing the best that we can to produce the best possible product. And we've managed to earn oversight and control for a long time. And it's because we do things correctly and our product meets the needs and the demands of the consumer. As we kind of turn the corner into technology and the advent of third-party verification and data-driven decisions, we have to look around and open our eyes a little bit to see, okay, how are we going to satisfy things moving forward? How are we going to best prove what we do? And one of the most basic ways to answer that question is to adequately, appropriately, and efficiently manage data so you can tell that story. So with that, I'll dive in a little further. So we know that we have specific vaccine protocols and treatment standards in the industry. Those can be third-party validated, or we tell that story when we take those calves to the sale barn. Right now, no platform exists that can take that data and flow it from one point in the supply chain to the other. And I will touch on that a little bit further in the next slide. We know that when we validate the things that we're already doing, we prove wholesome production standards and that what we're doing is in the best interest of not only the cattle, but the land, because that stewardship goes hand in hand. The better you are at taking care of your land, the better your cattle perform, and vice versa. I'd like to touch a little bit on the basics of identification, animal identification in the industry right now. There's a breadth of participants here, and so I just want to make sure that everybody understands the premise. Currently, cattle are identified by a visual tag with a general number. So this black steer here, he has a 280H number. That's what we call a visual tag or a tag number. And then also they're identified by an EID button. These EID buttons are regulated. Some are regulated to a premise, others are not. It just depends on the series, but they can be read by a radio frequency ID reader. And so as you work the cattle and they go through the chute, you take the reader and you scan them, and then that reader stores all of those identifiers and then any other additional information that you want to put in on top of those animals. So if it's a vaccine or a specific treatment, or most typically a weight is tied in with those animals when we work them, when we receive them. So it's the EID and the VID that is the standard for identification. On the Genesis platform, an EID is not required. If you don't use EIDs, you can still use the platform by using visual ID tags. However, if you receive a set of cattle, say from the rancher, they're on the Genesis platform, and you're a backgrounder and you'd like to continue the trail of data through the supply chain, you can then enter additional EID identifying information at that time. We wanted to keep the identifying standards one or the other because we're aware that at this time in the industry, not everyone utilizes the EID. And that'll be more important as we go into the demo. So I'm going to briefly touch on the beef cattle supply chain as well. For those of you that don't know, it's segmented. We come from the rancher farmer, jump into the backgrounder. Calves will then go to the feeder and then be processed at the packer and then on to the consumer. Currently, there are no database solutions that exist that will flow data from one to the next. So we have a lot of data islands. We have a ton of information at a lot of different points, and nothing brings all of that data together. And that's really what Genesis Blockchain for Beef is built to do. It's built to make this data talk and flow throughout the supply chain. So in terms of the rancher farmer role, this is where calves are produced. This is where producers make genetic decisions about what bulls they will use on their cows. It's the genesis or the beginning of the supply chain. If calves are going to go into a value-added program, so they have to have a specific set of vaccines, or they have to follow a specific route, such as no hormone treatments for specific programs to meet those requirements, this is where that starts. Cow-calf producers, whether they're ranchers or farmers, essentially set the trajectory for those animals even before they're born, when they make genetic decisions on what bulls they're going to use for their operations. The next stage that we've defined in the supply chain is a weaned calf or a backgrounder yard. So most ranchers wean their calves and will market them to the next stage. Some will retain ownership as well. These are for those that buy these weaned calves. They're independent backgrounding yards. Their role is to prepare or warm up calves for the feed yard. They administer another 1 or 2 additional rounds of vaccine. Their main goal is to take and establish a nutritional foundation on those calves so they can flow into the feed yard and will then be taken to an appropriate finishing weight. Some owners do retain ownership from the time they're a baby calf to the time they hit the feed yard and then onto the rail. Most calves switch hands throughout this supply chain. So from the feed yard, cattle are marketed straight to the packer. So they have buyers come and look at the calves and place a bid on them for the processor. So packers, there's major packing plants. Most of us know who they are. There's also regional sized plants, more and more every day. And then there's small custom slaughter facilities, which are scattered throughout the countryside. Typically, there can be an outflow of carcass data from the processor to the feeder, and then even sometimes they'll circle back to the producer. That's dependent upon typically how many times those cattle changed hands and just the communication channels that have been established between the different areas in the supply chain. So there are some real industry challenges. Like I've said, there's no existing solution that pulls data through the supply chain, and you cannot drive value or prove standards without that data. Right now, if you sell calves at the sale barn, there's a lot to be said for reputation, and not everybody has that. That takes a lot of time. And with startup requirements and costs and capital, I think that it would give beginning producers a fighting chance that they presented data and the standards that they've met, and it would allow them to continue to drive value into the cattle. And then those that are already producing reputation cattle can expand their current base by advertising and having the information to give to potential buyers. There are no systems which individually validate cattle by EID or VID from the beginning all the way through the supply chain. That obviously then turns naturally into a concern from a disease management perspective. I know that antibiotic use and fiduciary use of antibiotics is on the forefront of most producers' minds, for better or worse. And so I think that's something that we need to be able to talk about and to have conversations about. And by presenting that data, we can tell that story. And then that all wraps up naturally into the conversation around sustainability and how and why beef producers do what they do. So with that, I'm going to hop out of PowerPoint and just hop into our demo. Okay.
So Hannah, as we're starting here, tell us what we're logging into here.
Okay, so Genesis blockchain for beef has individual logins and that are password protected. So each user gets their login, and if you're a ranch and you have multiple people that need the ability to enter data, you can do that. Your ranch can have multiple logins, and so you all see and can tie into the same data set. So that's an important factor when you're talking about multiple locations or typically many people that are in charge of managing the data. So when we first log in, we see the view of our analytics dashboard. And from here, we get a total head count. We get a number of vaccines we've used. We get a breakdown of head count by males versus, I should say, steers and bulls versus heifers, males versus females. And then we also get an overarching idea of how many phases those calves have completed, how long, how many points through the supply chain has our data covered. As you can see right now, there's already one calf sitting in here. That's just from us playing with the system. So what we can do then is we can individually key in animals if we want. As you can see, there's identifiers, there's defining traits such as weight, ranch name, point of origin. Really, because of our custom fields and our ability to ingest mass amounts of data, we can enter and customize whatever we want, tag to those or added to that calf's data profile. So we can go down here and key in a custom field and then add that. And that data will forever be with that animal. So if you have specific needs, we can work with you to meet those in terms of data fields and storage. So the strength of Genesis blockchain for beef is that it was designed to ingest mass amounts of data at once. I've stared at spreadsheets for hours for a lot of years, and my eyes have bled because I just had, maybe we worked, I don't know, 600, 800 heifers across 2 days. And so I have a huge scan that is now sitting in Excel that I've got out of my RFID wand, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with it and where to go with it. And so I think it's important to note that although our data set today consists of 10 calves, this is designed to take hundreds, if not over 1,000 at a time. And so that's a real strong pillar of Genesis, is that the more data, the better. And block apps will back me up on that, I'm sure. So what we can do is import via CSV at this time, and it's set up that way because all our data right now comes from a wand and then is dropped into an Excel file. So Genesis speaks directly to those Excel files. So we'll see here, we uploaded the file, we went from 1 calf to 10 calves. So it's changed our calf list. We now can see we have our calves listed. We'll double check that they're all there just for good measure. And we have all 10 head, which is our sample set for today. So we can query down further into those calves by clicking on the calf tab, and it'll show our calves again. Once we select a calf, we can go in and we can do a couple things. So what we can do from here, is see that when we brought in the data of the calf, he had a vaccine at birth. It was Alpha 7. He was born a bull. The ranch name here is General. He was birth, EID, birth date. So that information all came from the Excel spreadsheet. So now what we can do is double check that he is on the blockchain through our audit log. And we will talk a little bit more about the audit log in just a second. So now let's say we branded our calves and we need to mass add vaccines. So what we'll do is we'll select them all. We'll go in, we'll add the vaccine. We'll include a little more additional information and we'll save that event. So vaccinations have been added successfully. We'll query back down and look at 1 calf to make sure that our information was added successfully, because technology always needs a double check, and there it is. So we see our vaccine. So we'll pop back out here to our list, make sure that it wasn't a fluke, make sure we can find it again, And we'll see that the vaccine was also added in addition to this calf's profile as well. Now, what about treatments? So oftentimes we need to individually identify treatments. So what we do is we just find our animal. We can also search by EID or VID. We come here to our treatments. This animal has never been treated before. We add our date, which, let's say we branded this calf and we're a week after, and he's got down ears and looks terrible. So we'll give him an antibiotic. We will save that to that calf's record. And so now we have the individual antibiotic use with that calf. So something that is unique and important about the blockchain is that there's an audit log. So an audit log is part of the immutable nature, the unchangeable nature of the blockchain. So when we put information onto a blockchain, it can't be changed. It can be modified, but that there will be record of the modification. So as we scroll over to here, we'll see that under vaccines, there's this lots of letters, lots of numbers. So that's a unique hash that's tied to that event. That's what will never be changed or can only be tied to that event. And so for every treatment, every event we have on the blockchain, there's a unique hash to go with it. And that's part of the immutable nature of the blockchain as a system. So from the rancher perspective, we will jump out and we'll go to our second step in the supply chain, and that is the backgrounder or the weaned calf stage. So currently, before we pull our calves in, we have 3 head, just to demonstrate. And what we see here is that we have these 3 head have 2 total treatments. They have lot numbers. And then we have a percentage of phases completed. So these calves have been weaned and transferred from the rancher. So we will come from here and go back to our calf list and add our additional 10 calves and transfer them through the supply chain. Must have did a little refresh there. So now we went from the 3 head, and now we have our 13 head. So we've transferred 10 calves from the rancher profile to the backgrounder profile. If you'll look at the top right, you'll see that we are logged in as a backgrounder. So we have moved points in the supply chain, and the data has came with that calf. So now, with our additional information, we've weaned the calf. He's gotten intranasal. He had an antibiotic treatment, and he has a weaning weight at the bottom. And this is information that we pulled in from an Excel sheet. We didn't type it in one at a time, single enter. We had the Excel sheet, we imported it all at one time, and we added all this information to that calf. It's important to note here that we can still add vaccines or treatments if we need to. We take a look at the audit log and we see that each event has been accounted for in the blockchain, and that these animals have added information from a calf in the supply chain to now a weaned calf at the backgrounder stage. So that information can also be exported to an Excel as well. So the data can flow both ways in the event that you would need it. When we talk about the next stage, obviously it's the feed yard. This whole time we're gaining data. We're adding treatments, we're adding weight to calves. So right now we haven't transferred our feed yard calves. We refresh, we're at 7. We refresh one more time, and we have 10 calves. So we pulled that in. We transferred that information through the system. So we look at these calves and we see that at this time, their weaning weight, their weaning information haven't changed because we haven't done anything to them yet. And so what we'll do then is we'll hop out, we'll pull our treatment and our vaccine information from our Excel file, and it'll add the information. So I'm just going to skip forward just a tick here. Okay. So we find our Excel file, And once we tie the feed yard data in, it will add a second weight. It will add that suite of vaccines and then any antibiotics if we did enter that information as well. So popping over and popping into this Calves profile, we'll see that down here at the bottom, it's a little hard to see, but there's a weight, there's a weaning weight, and then there's a second weight, 626. And if we would have had a date for that second weight, it would be in there as well, but I didn't drop a date into that data set. So we continue to build on our data throughout the supply chain, and we continue to tie it all together all the way through. So we back out of the backgrounders page, the calves come, back out of the feeder page. Next step is the processor. They go to the packer. Right now, again, we'll go from 0 to 10. And we can see that up in our top right-hand corner, we are logged in as the processor. So that's the point that we're at in the supply chain. We'll go, most data right now flows out of the packer as a spreadsheet. And so Genesis is designed to take the same headers that you get in your carcass report and feed that directly into the system. So once we get our 10 calves here, what we'll do is, there we go. We'll go back to our calves and we're going to enter a carcass report. So once we pull the data from the carcass report into the calves, that will be added, and it'll pop up here in just a second. So what we see here is we have a transition, from rancher to backgrounder, and then to the feed yard, and then now to the processor with unique hashes and identifiers all the way through. So the calf has been birthed, he's been processed, he's been to the feed yard, he's been weaned, and now he's at the feed yard with lot and pen information in tow as well. And so this whole snowball has been building throughout the life cycle of the entire calf. So at this time, we'll back out, we will import the carcass information, and I'll show you just a blip of what that looks like. So here we have our typical headers, hide color, plant ID, hot weight, marbling, all of those. We will hit import and wait for that to tie together. And once that's done, we've essentially completed and tracked data throughout the life cycle of an animal, from birth till the time it hangs on the rail. Right now, you can see here we have indices from the plant of fat and inches, hide color, hot carcass weight, percent kph, and date of birth, percent yield, grade, and quality. So essentially what we've done is we've taken the data islands that exist throughout the beef supply chain, and we speak to the entire life cycle of the animal through the Genesis platform. It's important to note that everyone gets an individual password protected login. Sid also spoke to the security of the platform itself. This is scalable, so multiple ranchers, feed yards, processors, they can all join and be a part of this network. And then each member governs how their data flows from one place to another. So it's designed to hold mass amounts of data, and then also for that data to flow between the users in the supply chain. The data belongs to the user. And once that data flows from one point to another, then the next person gets to govern the data that they flow to the next point in the supply chain. It ties together different events throughout the life cycle of the animal. It's important to remember that you can have one EID and it will tie in data from Excel to that EID. So although you can individually enter data, it's meant to pull lots of data automatically to minimize the labor and the time that goes into individually entering data. And that really means less mistakes and more validity and more time on the backside. With that, I'll just touch quickly that Genesis blockchain for beef has unique capabilities in the industry. It's a robust database with unmatched functionality. The user owns their data. It's immutable, it's decentralized, and then because of the nature of the blockchain, we can pull in third-party verification as well and add that to the records. It's an about face when it comes to antibiotic husbandry practices, vaccine protocols, when we have to talk about sustainability and environmental standards and how and why we do what we do. It grounds us in the facts, and there's nothing stronger than that. Because of the nature of the network, the data can flow both ways. You aren't necessarily flowing data all the way to the top and you're never seeing any of it. The data can also flow the other way, back down to the bottom. And that's really the goal, because the producer needs to be able to be informed to maximize their production decisions. The Genesis platform pulls it all together to optimize production decisions and maximize efficiency. And that's really the goal here. And so with that, we'll turn it over to Roberto for our question and answer session. Thank you guys, everybody, for listening.
Thanks so much, Hannah. That was great. Okay, so we've gotten a lot of really good questions from the audience, so let's just get started. Hannah, for you, kind of a big picture question. How does this technology impact the future of the industry?
Yeah, so I think when blockchain first came out, it was the conversation was based around Bitcoin and, non-digitized money pretty much. And it blew up and then it faded. And now when people hear blockchain, there's a little bit of fear there. And I will say that, it's disruptive technology, but I really believe that because of the ease of use and because of its dynamic flexibility in a way, it can really serve beef producers to help them face the questions that they're getting and to help them tell and illustrate a better story about their product. And when they do that, they're driving value. So there's a lot of things swirling around currently in the beef industry, and we're not here to debate that, but I think that we know that there are things that really need to change, and they don't have to change overnight. But as producers, if we can take hold and start taking these steps on our own and on our own initiative and say, hey, you want the data, you want the story, here it is, we're going to fare way better than if this just comes out of nowhere and blindsides us. So I think by preparing ourselves and arming ourselves with technology like this, it puts us in front of the curve, which is where you want to be when it comes to an industry, fighting for legitimacy and awareness and trying to make the producer as informed as they can get, so they understand and they know that, hey, we're out here to do good for us and to do good for you, and we're in this together. That's my answer.
Sounds good. So Sid, I know you touched on this earlier, but it's a big concern for people in the industry. So help the audience understand, like, who owns the data or who has access to the data? How does that all work in the platform?
Yeah, thank you for that. One of the things we understood is that, to ensure that we had participation, we wanted to have confidence that cow-calf ranchers can join and share information, and to be able to have a platform that allows for the benefits of blockchain and at the same time giving some conditional control to those participants. Our blockchain is set up in such a way that because we're private, because we're permissioned, we really have the opportunity to just share that data with the platform. That platform then, of course, is managed based upon the governance rules that are in place. so that a subset of data can move to participants along the way. And because we have the security of the blockchain, we have private networks in place, and we control the governance, we have the ability to keep all of that information private and only visible to those parties which you want to share them with. And the practical of that is, if you're a cow-calf rancher and you're providing calves in the market for some backgrounders, you may have, you know, multiple backgrounders that you're selling calves to. And those backgrounders really only need to see the data associated with those specific calves. So they're not going to see the entire lot. They're going to see the subset that they've purchased. Similarly, as it moves on to feed yards. And I think that's the important thing. Heretofore, we've really never had the opportunity to have a platform that could share information and provide that level of control. In some instances, it was, if you're sharing data, here's the spreadsheet that Hannah showed, we're going to pass that on to the next level. And once you do that, of course, you lose the actual control of that data at that point. Furthermore, it's really hard to add data too. So we're very focused on that, making sure that we deliver the value of blockchain security to the overall platform here with Genesis.
Okay, thanks, Sid. So another question came in that's related to this data issue. So what data sources does the Genesis platform integrate to, right? Hannah, when she went through her demo, she talked about Excel and CSV files, et cetera, but any other data sources that this integrates with?
So at this time, where we're at with the platform, we only are working with data out of Excel, but it is our future direction and kind of our phase 2, so to speak, that we work with the RFID reader companies. So when you put your data in the gun, when you get back to Wi-Fi or to the house Wi-Fi, that data automatically pushes to the Genesis cloud, and it's just sitting there waiting for you. Blockchain is by nature, from what I understand it, and Sid, you can correct me, but it's a little bit of a translating language. And so I don't think it's out of line to say that there are different databases and data services in use in the industry, traditional databases, and that Genesis would be flexible and able to work with those. But as of today, the data is coming out of Excel. But we are looking towards the future and how to seamlessly integrate into some existing solutions.
Yeah, I may just add to that as well. One of the things that Hannah and I learned as we've done some market outreach and talking with companies at NCBA is that there's a lot of good RFID readers. There's a lot of companies that make very unique tags to help with that individual animal identification. And so we are just in the early stages of meeting with those software companies, those tag companies, to be able to ingest their data through APIs. And we really look forward to that. Heretofore, there really hasn't been a platform that had this direct need. And so now that we have the platform in place, the automation of data import is something we are very interested in doing, to take time away from the office machine, to take time away from manual data processing. But that comes with time, and we will build that in as we go. So we're looking forward to that. I think the entire industry is as well. You know, now that we've got the tagging capability, we have convergence of technology, we have API integrations. It's only going to accelerate at the pace at which we can put data on the network and have quality, verifiable information available. So all part of the future, but we needed this very beginning point of Genesis blockchain for beef established first, and then invite others to join from a digital transformation perspective.
Okay, thanks, Sid. Thanks, Hannah. So this next question is kind of more specific to the value chain and all the different players involved that you walked through earlier, Hannah. So as a rancher, can I still get carcass data if my calves have been sold to a backgrounder, then to a feed yard, and ultimately to a packer?
So that's the overarching idea, is that everybody are members of the everybody are members of the network. And so then that data would flow through the network back to the rancher for them to make their best decisions. I would say that that is a huge hurdle. And part of the reason why, well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think if we can take steps to simplify that process, to share the data, to not add time and labor to our plate to do that, that's part of the solution. Another part of the solution is having conversations with people throughout the supply chain that say, hey, these cattle are on the blockchain. Here's the point of what we're doing. We're telling the story. We all know that for the betterment of the industry, this data needs to move and flow. And as those who understand how we're driving value into our cattle, we have to communicate those things, and the platform allows, or the platform is set up to optimize that information flow. There's a few different answers to that question, but I think that's the overarching principle, is that the idea is that today it's users, but then it becomes a network where this data flows and grows, really, and it becomes powerful enough to help us not only communicate efficiently, but make the best decisions we can to optimize what we're getting, what everyone's getting paid, all the way through the supply chain.
Sounds good. Okay, so this next question is bringing up a topic that a lot of people have been hearing about in the blockchain world. So the question is, how can the blockchain be used to create or issue an NFT, a non-fungible token, for each animal? And then I guess broader to that is, would an NFT even be desirable to the supply chain at this time or in the future? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I may offer a little direction on that. I think that is future capability once the process is more clearly understood. Anything we can do to add value to production practices and the animals that are being produced will allow for more of this next step technology, if you will. Today, there's a generic term called program calves that go through certain protocols that add value along the way. And there could be processes whereby that stewardship and animal husbandry really comes to be defined as a way in which those animals are being handled and cared for. And in that process, an NFT for that specific animal could be desirable in the future. For today, we are very focused on the ability to leverage that individual unique animal identification piece and be able to allow for this next level of discussion to take place. So I think we're on the way, and I look forward to all the uniqueness that we can add to the industry. So near term, probably not on an NFT level, but let's get a year or two under our belt, and I bet we'll define exactly what we want that NFT token to represent to the buyer of that animal on the next step.
I would just add, from the beginning of the idea, trading, I had heard about tomatoes or produce being traded as an NFT, and it just blew me away. And the vision, right, would be someday that, yes, cattle would be traded as an NFT, and I think it's, like Sid says, it's a couple years down the road. We've got to get our grounding and our footing and our foundation in the technology and how it can serve us and how we get to the stage of an NFT, and then we turn the corner. But I think that it's not out of the question. It's just a matter of time.
Well, thanks a lot on that. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. The question that came in is, so what does it take to get started with Genesis blockchain for beef? Kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah, so right now you can reach out to us at www.genesisbeefdata.com, and we'll get you the login and get you squared away with the information that you need. I would like to speak to whomever is interested. Just understand wholly the needs that their operation requires, and so we can make sure that we can get you in on the right login at the right point throughout the supply chain, and we'll go from there. So you can find more information on our website, and if you have any questions, please give me a call. I'm on LinkedIn. There's my email right there. So I'm easy to get a hold of.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. So I guess you've already kind of started the ending of the presentation, but just wanted to hand it over to you for some final words, and appreciate the content that you and Sid provided today.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. Appreciate everyone in attendance today. Certainly, we're eager to share more information as you are needing that. Feel free to check out the Block Apps website as well. We have some great information on there from both TraceHarvest and Genesis Blockchain for Beef. And reach out to Hannah or myself, and we'll make sure that we are underway with taking the next steps and helping you join as a member of Genesis Blockchain for Beef. Hannah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
If you have a question that didn't get answered today, email me, and I will be more than happy to answer it for you. I know we promised an hour, and we're bumping right up against that. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it. Reach out to me. I love talking cattle, all things technology. Give me a call. Ask me all the tough questions. More than happy to answer them. So thank you, everybody, for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.